We're here today with Dr. Andrew Root, and we are delighted to have you here, Andy. Thank you so much for coming and for speaking to us about youth ministry and about changing youth ministry from the thing to the story. So we're going to explore that a little bit. But my first question for you is, how did you first become invested in youth ministry? What brought that piece of ministry alive within you that led you to spend so much of your time and life to that work?
Yeah. I think for me, it pretty much everything I've done has been in one way or another connected to youth ministry. And it really started because I was a young person who, I don't know if I would say felt a call to ministry, but I think, retrospectively looking back on it, felt a call to ministry and had a youth director that I really loved, had a Young Life area director who was important in my life, and both of them saw that in me, and then I felt drawn to doing ministry. I mean, this is like in high school, and then them saying like, well, we have VBS, you should do it. It wasn't even me saying, hey, I'd like to be involved in the VBS, or there's, I'm in high school now and there's middle school kids, I'd like to do something. But they saw it in me and said, you should do that. So it in some ways it's never left that kind of line. And so, I mean, the bigger question for me now is like, why, as a very old man now, or feeling old after traveling so much and things, why am I still doing this? And things have broadened for me. I think, for me, there's never been a separation between youth ministry and ministry. I mean, to say youth ministry is inclusive of kind of all forms of ministry. And so why I stayed committed to the qualifying word of youth in front of ministry is really partly that I just have a real love for younger people. But I think there's theological reasons for why we should stay focused on that. And then I've just found it an incredibly interesting kind of zone to think big thoughts. I find people on the ground doing youth ministry are really open to thinking big thoughts. And for me, thinking about the kind of concreteness of God's action in people's lives, to not be too kind of jargony, has been something that's been really inspiring to me and something that I've really wanted to focus on. And that started in youth ministry. It started in thinking, how is it that an 11-year-old or a 14-year-old encounters the presence of God, and how, if we believe that's really real and true, how is it that people encounter that? So continuing to think bigger theological thoughts and even kind of cultural philosophical thoughts inside and next to young people has been really significant. I always find it interesting that going the back way is when you add like youth in ministry, it often feels like it downgrades youth ministry, or youth ministry is not as important. I obviously don't believe that's true, but I think when we start to think about kind of cultural philosophical ideas or theological ideas next to young people, there's something really comes alive, I think, and there's significant ways that we can think about how modernity works or how the concreteness of revelation works and things like that.
This might be just wordplay, but when you were talking, what came to mind was, the concept of youth ministry as opposed to ministry with youth, or ministry alongside youth.
Yeah.
It's just a different model. Right. It's a different way of approaching it.
And I feel much more comfortable with the second one. And that's kind of been, for me, a central kind of core commitment, is that this is ministry, and you could stop there with a particular context. And that context of people is determined by all sorts of realities, whether they're biological realities, the fact that they are young, or whether they're kind of culturally imposed ones, which I think often happens too.
Thanks.
Yeah.